While it's true that I did start out my training with a big chest, if I had to guess, it's probably not the kind of big chest you're looking for. My chest went from basically being one of the worst aspects of my entire body to one of the strongest points in my physique. So in this video, I'm gonna lay out what I did to get my chest from boobs to boobs. I'm gonna start off by pointing out the biggest mistake guys around me in the gym make when they train their chest. So here's what I see. Frederick is a new or even intermediate level lifter. He loves to bench press and goes to the gym a lot with his friends, especially on push day. So naturally, he's pretty competitive. As soon as Frederick and his friends walk into the gym, they beeline straight to the bench press, do a half-assed warm-up set with the bar, and then immediately go into their PR sets and bounce the weight off their chest like animals for about 6 reps, clearly doing way more load than they can handle. If you want to develop your chest well, this is not how you should approach things. Now I get it, you don't want to be the weakest guy out of all your friends, or maybe you just like to lift heavy, which is awesome. I'm not necessarily saying that this is a terrible thing. It really is a fun way to train. However, I'd argue that Frederick and potentially all of his friends, just based on looking at him, are barely getting mind-muscle connection or even a pump in their chest from doing this. Mind-muscle connection is crucial for muscle growth. Research shows that actually focusing on the muscle being worked gets you a better muscle activation and leads to greater hypertrophy compared to just focusing on the movement itself and basically just moving weight around. In other words, you need to actually consciously engage with the muscles while you're working them, which ties to another really important aspect of your training being progressive overload, which I'm not going to go too into detail because this is a chest training video, but essentially while lifting heavy is important, especially for building your strength up, it's not just about the weight you're lifting. You can also achieve progressive overload by increasing your volume, which means more sets, more reps, actually improving your form and technique, or even slightly reducing your rest time, basically anything that makes the lift harder. Now I'm going to bring things back to my personal experience. The entire time I've trained, I've basically always had the weakest bench press out of my friends. But there is a caveat to this. Despite having a weaker bench press, my chest is way fuller and way more developed. There's 2 reasons for this. 1, genetics. Some people just have great frames and bone structures to push super heavy loads with no issues. I, unfortunately, am not one of those people. And then 2, I've never actually specifically trained to increase my strength or get my bench press higher. It's just never been something I particularly cared about. Instead, I've always tried to prioritize hypertrophy to the best of my ability. And I think the reason for this is actually because of my starting point. I started not only fat, I was weak and skinny fat, and at the same time as that, I was in a caloric deficit when I began my training. Sorry to interrupt, but this video is brought to you by yours truly. I've been working really hard behind the scenes on my program, which is set to release sometime around July 1st, and I'm doing a special promotion where before it releases, you can get 20% off by entering your email in the first link in the description. And before I release my program, I'll send you a 20% off discount code that you can use within the first week that my program drops. Also, follow me on Instagram. It's gonna help me network so I can grow like 2 times faster. And who wouldn't want to see my pretty little face 2 times more? Back to the video. So my lifts were trash and I looked like shit, but I cared a lot more about not looking like shit. On top of that, being in a calorie deficit meant that if I were to focus on pushing heavy weight and prioritizing strength, my joints, especially my shoulders, probably wouldn't have been so thrilled. Another really important factor for the muscle growth of your chest, or just your muscle growth in general, is eccentric training, where you focus on the lowering phase of the lift. Controlling the descent of your movement is an extremely important factor in maximizing your muscle growth. However, everyone's different. Some people can actually get a ginormous chest by doing exactly what I suggested that Frederick was doing wrong earlier. Your individual response to training matters a lot. So with that in mind, we're going to get to the fun part, which is what I actually do for my chest. In my training, I prioritize my mind-muscle connection and pump above all else. When I start with my pressing movement, my goal isn't to lift super heavy and impress my friends. I start with about 60% of my working volume, actually take the time to warm up my chest, which means taking at least 1 or 2 sets to get the blood flowing in there, and then really emphasizing that eccentric motion on my lift. And then of course when I move into my working sets, I'm not bouncing the bar off my chest like a fucking animal. I'm slowly lowering the bar to my chest, and again really emphasizing that eccentric motion and actively focusing on feeling my chest muscle fibers throughout the entire movement, especially at the start of my sets. Then, because I often do train without a spotter, this specifically applies to my free weight and pressing movements, I usually will end up about 1 or 2 reps away from failure, because obviously if I took it to failure, probably wouldn't be very ideal. So towards the end of my sets when I'm pretty fatigued, I do just a little bit of bouncing and cheating, just so I can squeeze out a few more extra reps and get that volume that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to. I'm usually doing about 8 to 12 reps, and sometimes slightly more depending on how my shoulders and joints are feeling that day. Back when I had boobs instead of boobs, I honestly really struggled to get any kind of mind muscle connection in my chest, especially with pressing movements. Now I still do actually have this to some extent, but I have more experience and more physical muscle on my chest for me to actually feel, so things have gotten a little bit easier since then. But in the beginning of my training and what I did to remedy this, and honestly what I attribute the majority of my chest growth to, was adding and prioritizing chest flies in my routine. When it comes to getting a pump, really feeling that squeeze, and getting a fantastic mind muscle connection, across heaven and earth, chest flies are just the honored one. When I started getting those slow, squeezing flies in, again with heavy weight, 8 to 12 reps, and not too heavy that I can't feel it, I was able to require an actually good chest pump. Next, I'm going to talk about what you pretty much hear in every single chest video on the internet, upper versus lower chest. I will say that this is definitely something that you should take into consideration when designing your training, but I think it's pretty fucking over-exaggerated. However, I do think that incline bench press is superior to bench press for a few reasons. One, in my opinion, it's more of a natural movement. I get better mind muscle connection with it than I do on flat bench, and yeah, there is the added benefit of increased emphasis on the upper portion of your chest. But as Mr. Incredible said, chest is chest. If you train your chest, it's gonna grow. And I'm gonna be honest here, you could probably ignore like 80% of the advice in this video. And if you just train your chest as hard as you can for a year and with decent form, it's gonna grow and you'll have an aesthetic chest. But some kind of incline pressing movement, whether it's conventional barbell press or using machines, should be a staple in your routine if you want that superhero chest. As far as the machines versus free weight argument goes, you need to experiment and use trial and error to decide what's best for you. For example, for me, flat bench kind of sucks. I get a lot better of a mind muscle connection using machine press or those weird swingy doodads. However, I get a phenomenal mind muscle connection and squeeze when I do incline barbell bench press, so I stick with it. In my chest routine, I'm usually doing 9 to 12 total sets of working chest volume and usually 3 or 4 movements. I don't always do the exact same routine every time I go to the gym because of traveling for college, going between different gyms, and dealing with different machines with different loads and angles. What's truly important is making sure you actually feel your chest being activated, hitting your chest hard, so not ego lifting but still going heavy, bringing those working sets to failure or as close to failure as you can, and then for the best results, doing a variety of movements to hit your chest in different ways so you're actually working your entire chest. And then remember that consistency and patience are key. Your titty transformation isn't going to happen overnight. It takes time, consistency, and an experimental mindset that will allow you to figure out what's actually best for your body. If you learned something or enjoyed the video, do what's natural and subscribe to my channel. That way you get notified when my future videos come out. And please follow me on Instagram. It's linked in the description. Having more Instagram followers helps me network and is going to help me grow my channel a lot faster, even though it's just another dumb social media platform. I also offer one-on-one coaching, which is linked in the description. And don't forget to sign up to save 20% on my program when it releases around July 1st. See you in the next video.